Let's just say I think I did 3 or 4 in New York. It goes beyond, yeah. Right, yeah. Anyway, what is InSpec? We're a multidisciplinary bibliographic database, and the areas that we cover are physics, electrical and electronic engineering, computer and control, IT, and manufacturing, production, and mechanical engineering. We also cover a whole range of sort of related topics. So we've got a lot of nanotechnology, we have medical instrumentation, so pretty much anything that has a physics or an engineering component to it, we cover. This is a not-to-scale breakdown of our coverage by area. So about almost 60% of the database deals with physics, about 37% electrical engineering, computer and control about 27%, manufacturing, production, mechanical engineering about 8%, and IT about 1%. Obviously way more than 100% because there's overlap between all of these areas. We launched the database in 1969, so we have just over 40 years of coverage. We reached 12 million records last week. We had a party in the booth on Monday. We had some cake. I don't know if any of you got to get it, but that was fun. A good excuse to party. One day when I really had nothing better to do, I did a search where I looked to see how many countries were represented as publishers. And I came up with 98 different countries. So what we're trying to do is cover the literature completely. Each year we're covering the publications from about 1,000 different publishers. This is what makes it, I think, much different than the single publisher databases that you get for the Science Direct, the IEEE, the SPIE. We're covering that material plus 990 other publishers. So it's a type of thing where if you're really trying to be comprehensive in science, it's virtually impossible to do except through an abstracting and indexing service. Each year we're scanning about 5,000 different serial titles for coverage, and we add between 2,000 and 3,000 conference publications every year. What I also want to point out is that what we select and the indexing is actually being done by subject specialists. So it's actually being done by people who are looking at the literature and able to make a good understanding of what it is and whether it's worth covering and whether it's important. Just graph shows sort of how we've grown from 1969 to 2010. Slight blip in 2007 when we put in a new production system, but we caught up the next year. Technology is wonderful when it works. 99% of what goes into the database comes from either journal articles or conference papers. So the vast majority of our coverage is in journals and papers. Most of the journals are peer-reviewed. The conferences are the important conferences being held. The remaining 1% of the database includes things like books, reports. We used to cover patents. We cover dissertations, some and we've started covering high-quality videos as well. We've started ones that are produced by the IET, our parent organization. And so we're going to be expanding that as well. So it's also going to be a good place for, again, the high-quality videos, mainly for things that were taped at professional society conferences. The way our records break down, the information above the line, the title, the abstract, the other bibliographic information, that's what we're taking from the original documents. The information below the line, the controlled and uncontrolled vocabulary, the classification codes, treatment types, chemical indexing, numerical indexing, astronomical object indexing, and the patent classification codes, that's what our indexers are adding as extra value. Again, it's stuff that makes it so much more searchable and so much better to be able to refine and find exactly what you're looking for. I particularly want to point out the patent classification codes was something very new for us. We started doing it about a year ago. We wrote a mapping program from our own classification to the International Patent Classification. We include the information going back to 1969. So if you're doing a lot of patent research and you're used to using the patent files and the patent classification codes, you can use the same codes to search on InSpec. If you're not an experienced patent searcher, you can search for text and more readable language in InSpec, find out what codes are assigned to specific technologies, and then use those codes in the patent files. I've done just enough patent searching in my life to know I'm not particularly good at it, because I don't have enough science background to really understand all the science involved. I find when I using something like this makes it much easier because I can look stuff up using real language as opposed to trying to guess what something's called in patentese. Some of the other searchable fields, pretty much the normal subspecs that you get on all the bibliographic databases. You can search for patent information, the publisher, the abstract, titles, the author, the affiliation, pagination, volume, whatever else you need. We also have the InSpec archive. About 5 years ago, we digitized our old print abstracts, and this covers the material from 1898 to 1968. Has 873,700 records in it from 57 different countries, so even back then we were trying to be very international in our coverage. And the abstract contains these wonderfully long, detailed records, because the assumption was at that point that most likely what you saw in an abstracting journal, like Science Abstract, like Physics Abstract, was probably as much of the full text as you were going to get to unless you were at a fairly large library. So they're very detailed records. Also, in addition, in the archive, what we did was we left in the original indexing and the original classification codes, and then we also added the modern equivalents, because it's often quite tough to figure out what something would have been indexed under in 1904, because the names of the whole technology, especially as technologies emerged, like cars, computers, airplanes, things that were just evolving at that point, have very strange indexing. Yeah. The availability of InSpec, we're available through EBSCOhost, Engineering Village, InSpec Direct, Ovid, Thomson Innovation, Web of Knowledge, also pay-as-you-go through Dialog, STN, DataStar, and we also, if you have the type of system where you can take raw data, we can provide an XML data feed as well. Thank you.